The Heart of Mi Familia, or El Corazón de Mi Familia, an illustrated picture book that is about a blended Anglo and Latina family. The interview is wide-ranging, everything about how to help your child assimilate two cultures. And it really helps that Carrie is a PsyD. What's a PsyD? Well, we get into that in the interview also. So let's jump right into the interview, but you know what comes first. Let's roll that opening montage. Carrie, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Ever since I saw the book, I wanted to talk to you about it. The Heart of Mi Familia, or The Heart of My Family, for those out there that aren't bilingual. I usually like to start off by asking the authors to give us a quick elevator pitch before we jump into a game.
Okay, all right.
So why don't you give us the quick elevator pitch so everybody knows what we're talking about?
All right, fantastic. So The Heart of Mi Familia is about a little girl who has bicultural heritage. Her mother is Euro-American or Caucasian, and her father is Latino. And she's exploring the world culturally and her own cultural identity of what that means for her, visiting her grandma's house and visiting her abuela's house, and kind of comparing where they're similar and where they're different, and how her whole world is surrounded by love in this cultural context, and how that makes her who she is and how proud she is of herself and her family.
So she's kind of comparing apples and manzanas.
Yes, exactly.
That's wonderful. Now, if you've seen any of the interviews that I've done before, you know that we play a game called Off the Shelf. Clear the Shelf. Have you seen any of the interviews?
No, actually, I looked up your blog and I was reading a bunch of your reviews, and I think I got a little down the rabbit hole reading all the reviews, and I forgot to look for the interviews.
That was a big mistake. That was a really big mistake. And your publicist didn't warn you.
No, they did not.
That was a really big mistake. So I'm going to ask you 3 questions that have absolutely nothing to do with nothing, and you have to give me your quick answer. You ready?
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Think of it as a psychological free association game.
Yeah.
Except there are correct answers.
Oh. Okay. Pressure's on.
If you could travel in time, forward or backward?
Backward.
Why?
I like the romanticism of the history that we can get from going to old Europe and the buildings and the anthropology of studying humans and our culture. And
oh my God, that is a wrong answer.
It's the wrong answer.
Because you would lose the flush toilets.
Oh, that is true. Yeah, some logistical pieces are harder back then.
I'm sorry, Mr. Alex 1, Carrie 0.
Okay.
What do you spend too much money on?
What do I spend too much money? Food, probably. I love trying different food and eating, and yeah.
What's your favorite cuisine?
Favorite cuisine? Curries. So I like Indian curry and Thai curry. I feel like it's pretty much a tie between the two, honestly. So on my mood.
Well, I'm going to give you a secret. If you go to Costco, the frozen curries at Costco, fantastic.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. There's a chicken masala at Costco that's a staple in our freezer.
Ours too, right? And the coconut curry is like incredible. What is up with that? What do they do? I have no idea, but it's really good. You know, last time I said something in an interview about a recipe, it was about crock pot applesauce, and I got 40 requests. for the recipe. So now I'm sure people are going to be asking us what the secret curry is at Costco. Well, they're going to have to write in.
There you go. Yeah.
We're not going to give them. Last one.
Okay.
You're arrested in the middle of the night and you call your friends. They immediately think you were arrested for what?
Being probably being out of curfew in an area I'm not supposed to be. So
Okay, now that's loaded. We have to explore that a little more. What were you doing and who were you with?
I was probably just so I'm trying, it's interesting because I'm like thinking of occasion or something.
Oh
So
no, I saw that in your eyes, doctor.
yeah,
You're not the only one who's a trained observer. She's like,
yeah,
she's about to pull an example from real life here.
yeah. So yeah, just like hanging out in the park and it's like past curfew of the city and you're not supposed to be out and you're not supposed to be in this public area. You're just hanging with some friends and having a good time. Not wanting to end the social time that you're having, but the
I think
restrictions
there's
are.
a book there. I'm not sure it's a children's book,
Yeah, it was a children's.
but there's potential for a book. So now that we're talking about books, tell me, how did the Heart of Mi Familia come out? What prompted you to write this wonderful picture book?
Yeah, love this question. So it definitely came out of a lot of love. I wrote a book in, oh my gosh, so it came out in 2018, my first book, Marvelous Maravilloso, and I wrote that actually back in 2014, so a really long time ago. I had an interaction, my husband and I had an interaction with a person who's close in our life. And unfortunately, it was a really negative interaction about, um, cultural diversity, about being a bicultural family. A person wasn't in support of being in an interracial relationship and all of that. And it was kind of a surprise. We didn't see it coming because my husband and I had been together for many, many years and we had a child already. And so I didn't know how to process that. And I sat with it actually in a training for a weekend where I couldn't even pay attention to the training at all because I was so messed up in my head and wondered about what can I do here. And so I was, how do I process that? And so what do we tell our clients, right? As a therapist, like write it out, express yourself in some way. And I knew that talking with this person wasn't
Draw
going
me
to
a
go.
picture.
Yeah, draw a picture. Yeah. So I started writing out what my child, so my daughter at the time, she was about 3, how she experienced that. Luckily she wasn't there when we had the interaction, but how could she contextualize this? I searched for books, children's books out there for a bicultural child, and experience and to support her. Because I felt like if we're having this experience as her parents, this is going to happen for her at some point. I
Yes,
wanted to give it.
and back then you didn't find many.
No, I couldn't find anything, and the few that I did find weren't a Latino and Caucasian family, and so I said, well, what is this, and how can I speak to this? And so I wrote down, kind of putting myself in her shoes, but processing my own what was going on, grief, anger, resistance, all that stuff, and wrote that first initial book, but it kept going. And I wrote basically half of another one where the girl had grown up a little bit. The little girl was a little bit older. The first book is all about, as a 3-year-old, color, and she's discovering labeling the world. And so she goes around and she's like, there's a beautiful rainbow of colors
Right,
in the
and
flowers,
let's
right?
pause for one moment and let's hit the name again so we're sure everybody knows. Marvelous Maravilloso.
Yes, Marvelous Maravilloso. And the
And that's
subtitle.
also Imagination Press imprint, if I remember correctly.
It is, yeah, yeah. And so in that book, the little girl is
And
so
give me 1 second. I'll make sure that there's a link below that everybody can see if they want a copy of that book as well. Go on.
sure. Yeah. So as she's in as a 3-year-old, her cultural identity and her development is really on that piece where she's like, okay, the lake is blue, the tree is green, and then she's like, hey, my dad has black hair and brown skin, and my mom has yellow hair and white skin, and and what that is. And so she's describing that kind of very concretely as a 3-year-old would. And so then in this book, The Heart of Mi Familia, she is a little bit older, and so she gets to start exploring more about that culture. It's not just about what she can see, in that labeling of what she can see, but it's also about the food and about the music and the smells and and the feeling that you get from each culture. So
Here we have a sample.
yes, there's a sample. This is one of my favorites actually, because it describes, if you write what you know. So it describes going to grandma's house, which would be from my experience and my cultural family. And so going to grandma's house in the fall, and you see and you smell and you hear all these different things. So smelling the pumpkins and the cider from the fall experience. Here in California, we have a fall where we definitely see changing of the colors around the trees, and then we have the spiced apple cider, we have the pumpkins, and we have hot chocolate. There's such a
one of the things that's particularly striking about this is that if you look at the different representations, you can actually see the vapor emanating from all the different smells. So that's something that the parents can use with the kids. And you look at all of the different facial expressions, and children in the 3, 4, and 5 age range, you can point to the faces and say, what is the character feeling? What is the character communicating? How do they feel? And you have real chops for this, right? Because you're a PsyD. Why don't you explain to people what a PsyD is?
So PsyD is a doctorate in psychology. So I'm a clinical psychologist. I work with children and families daily, with multiple different areas of what they bring in the room, from anxiety, depression to family stress, disruption, trauma. So I've been working in the field for many years now.
Right, and you work with patients, so you've used that experience to help you craft this book.
I did, and so in this book at the end, and it's part of what I love about working with Imagination Press actually, is they include a note to parents and caregivers for helping us as adults contextualize what is going on in the book emotionally for the children and developmentally for them, and it gives us language to help support the child in these conversations. Because when it comes to cultural diversity and cultural identity, it starts so much younger than we as an adult conceptualize. Actually, it happens very, very young. And so I have a little bit in this book as well as in the other book about when that starts and why that's actually a really good thing, and to start talking about it much earlier than we anticipate to talk about it. A lot of times parents feel like it's a PC topic, they don't want to bring it up, or they're concerned about it, and then they have a moment in the store where their child points to somebody and says out loud an observation that they're making about that person. It's not a negative observation, but it's just like, hey, look at what they're wearing, or their skin color, or something like that. And then the parent gets embarrassed. Like,
children don't know from negative or positive. They just observe and repeat.
Yeah.
They just make the observation.
Absolutely. And so it's really important in that that we have that as a parent, like how to feel confident in how we hold that, because I've seen a lot of times parents that feel just automatically guilty, like they're like, oh my gosh, that person's going to think my kid is discriminating against them, or whatever, or said something racist, and it's not that at all. It's just like, yeah, it's just an observation of their world, and how we can turn that into a really beautiful moment to talk about culture and talk about diversity and themselves and who they are as a kid in relation to the world, and just a positive developmental moment, right? And so I love that Imagination Press gets to include that piece in the back of the books, and I did that in this one as well as the other one.
Well, yeah. And it's an additional tool to help the parent help the child develop, right? I mean, because it's not just the story. A lot of times parents are in so much of a hurry to get through the story because they're ready for the next thing, that they forget that picture books have evolved and they're actually tools that can help you parent. I don't know if you noticed the tagline on the blog, but the tagline is, the word parent is not just a noun, it's also a verb.
Yes,
right? We parent, we are not just the parent,
right,
as it were. Now, I noticed that the Hispanic family has a darker skin tone. Was that on purpose?
It was by design, actually. the illustrator, Christine, she's a beautiful artist. Oh my gosh, her work is so
My
amazing.
God, this work is gorgeous.
Yes.
Absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah, she did the work in my first book too, so I was so
I
excited to
noticed.
get to work with her. Yeah, again, and if I had any notes, she was quick to be able to work with me and collaborate in adjusting some of that. And so this was actually something that was done on purpose, because it contextualizes that conversation of being bicultural. Of course, there's bicultural families where skin tone and color could be the same. It wouldn't be as noticeable. It'd be like passing, as we say, but it is at this point, I think, to really illustrate the point of being from different cultures. It helps, I think, the child to contextualize that a little bit more, because it's so concrete of a construct. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, it makes total sense. And I think that in the example that you shared, it works particularly well. I've lost your image. There you are.
Oh, okay.
You popped out for a second, but you're back. So as you're telling parents to, or I'm going to give you an opportunity to give advice to parents on how to use your book. How would you use your book?
So
first, let's divide it up into two parts. Let's keep it real simple. A family that is not bicultural.
Okay. So I think this book is, I think it's a good read in general, but I do think that with a family who.
Well, I think it's more than a good read. Let's not undersell here, okay?
Okay.
Let's not undersell. I think it's an important
on the different
read.
levels, yeah. On the different
I think it's an important read. I think it's look, the review will say it, but the prose is good. It's well written. It's a beautiful book to read. It's a very cute story. It's a good children's book. Otherwise, you and I wouldn't be talking at all.
Okay, thank you. Yes,
but it's an important book. So how do we?
Yeah.
Why is a bicultural family? Why is a family that's not bicultural interested in this book? Why should they read it?
Yeah, I think that there is a lot of answers to that question, multi-levels actually. So,
you got 2 minutes.
I got 2 minutes. Okay, so in this world, and in our society, there are a lot of families who are bicultural and have different cultural backgrounds. And so, coming from a family that would be monocultural, I guess I would say monocultural. So, being a monocultural family, your kids will have friends who have different cultures, bicultural or monocultural, different culture from your own. And this book contextualizes how important and how gravitating culture is, and how interesting it can be, and how much it can enrich your life. And it actually starts a context. If you're monocultural, you can have that conversation about where your family culture is, and it's not one world is better than another world at all. It's just like, these are our different worlds, and how cool can we talk about that and learn more about your own heritage. So it can spark that conversation, as well as create understanding around your friends and the diversity that's in your classroom or on the playground and all of that. So I think in the society, that's one level of why it's important.
And the more we understand about each other, the more we can get along, right?
Absolutely, definitely. And I think cultural identity for any child, whatever their heritage background is so important, and it gives them such a rich context to who they are, and a loving sense of self. It can really help to build a loving sense of self to have these descriptors. And so books about culture in general, for your children I would highly recommend any of these books for that reason. Yeah.
So what's next for you?
So the editors were, so my editor at Imagination Publisher, oh my gosh, I'm starting to talk weird. Okay.
I was a little
so my editor,
right? Imagination pressure. I'm going to have to call
I know.
What
Sorry.
are you doing to this poor woman?
Yeah. So Imagination Press, they've been nothing but very supportive. And when my first book was coming out, and I was talking to them about that I had written half of this other book and I'd never really finished it, they were like, "Oh, we're so interested in it. We want to see it. Let's work on this together." And And so that's where the
Hold up one second, because you're having a little audio difficulty. Are you there?
Eventually.
Hold
I'm
up.
here. Can you hear me? Okay.
Let's reset.
Okay.
You were talking to Imagination Press. They said you told them that you had written half the book, and they were
Yes.
very excited about it. That's how much we heard.
Okay. Yes, they were very excited and very supportive and wanting to pursue finishing that book. And so we did. It took a couple of years to get through it, and now that's the Heart of Mi Familia, and I'm so excited about that. And so we've talked about a theme for a third one, to maybe make it kind of a trilogy to some extent. Not that they don't stand on their own, they do, but together they all complement each other. So I've played with that idea a little bit here and there. And then I'd love to continue writing children's books. I didn't have this on my radar as something I would be doing in my life, and I am so in love with it. And it allows me to do a creative outlet that I don't get in my daily grind. And now that I have my 2 children and we go off on adventures, you write about what you know and what happens in your life. And so the first book only had my daughter per se in that book, and then this one has both my daughter and my son represented in it. And so I can see more adventures happening and maybe something around that. I'm looking forward to it, to possibly do.
I think that's wonderful, and I think that we need you to write more books. So at Imagination Pressure, they need to get you to do more. And I'm going to get a call into that publicist, because obviously they're working you a little too hard.
Yeah, no, they're so great. They're so supportive. I really do. I'm so lucky to have landed with them, honestly, out of all the publishing, traditional publishing companies out there or self-publishing. I definitely explored what was the right avenue for me. And I thought I was going to do independent publishing. And then in the end was like, you know what? The worst they can say is no. And I send it off. I put all my eggs in one basket and sent to Imagination Press, and I can't believe they picked me up. It was a fantastic moment.
The worst thing they can always say is no. And you have a no if you don't send it in, right?
Right. Absolutely. Yeah.
Right. Well, Carrie, thanks so much for joining me today.
Thank you.
Really, really appreciate it. And those of you that are watching, you know that I'm going to stay talking to Carrie for a few more minutes. You all can meet me back at the desk, and we have a couple more notes to talk about. I'll see you there.
I'm always amazed at how authors came about their books. And in this instance, we learned that it was a personal experience that helped Carrie along in the process to actually write not 1, but 2 books about the biculturalism that her children experienced. It's really quite wonderful that out of a personal, if you will, bad experience, the good of these 2 picture books came out. I forgot to mention at the beginning that, yes, Carrie Lara is the author of The Heart of Mi Familia, but just as important, the book is illustrated by Christine Batus, and wonderful illustrations they are. I hope that you enjoyed the interview. And remember, at Mr. Alex's bookshelf, the word parent is not just a noun, it's also a verb. And it's books like The Heart of Mi Familia that help us become better parents. I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.